It's the Brad Field Weather Podcast, brought to you by Action Carpet of Simsbury and Sinnott Travel of Waterbury. I'm Dan Lavallo, he's Brad Field, and we're putting our podcast together a little bit earlier this week because, Brad, we have got some kind of a storm moving into Connecticut and our region. What's going on?
Dan, this is a huge nor'easter. We have a significant ocean storm, and I think it's going to be with us for 2 or 3 days. So we are taping this podcast on Wednesday. But Dan, I think that this nor'easter, which is starting to get underway in Connecticut even as we speak, I think this is going to really ramp up, especially in the Thursday and Thursday night time frame. And I think that the nor'easter is going to linger into the day on Friday as well. We've got all sorts of warnings and watches up across southern New England, and this is a very, very major storm.
Well, what brought this all about? What were the conditions that made this kind of storm ripe for our area?
Well, Dan, you and I have talked about this a million times. It is the Greenland block. Guess what? It's there.
Wow.
We've got a storm in the ocean now that is just drifting north. It's drifting north toward the benchmark, and that benchmark is 40 degrees north latitude, 70 degrees west longitude. And when a storm is in that position, we get very big stormy conditions across southern and southeastern sections of New England. So, picture the storm out near Nantucket. Actually, 4070 is a little southeast of Nantucket. But just picture a storm there rotating counterclockwise. So if you extrapolate the wind field around that low pressure system, that would mean a northeast wind here in Connecticut. So this is how we get our big nor'easters, when a storm takes this coastal track out toward that benchmark of 40 degrees north and 70 degrees west, and we get the northeast flow in over Connecticut. Now, what these wind components do is the northerly component of the northeast wind brings down the cold, and the easterly component of the northeast wind brings in the moisture off the Atlantic Ocean. So you put these two things together in the wintertime, and typically it's cold enough in the wintertime to support a big snowstorm. It's not going to happen this time here in southern New England. The conditions are not such that they were like in the October snowstorm back in 2011. But this is a very significant storm that's going to pound us for days. And due to that Greenland block, Dan, this storm is not going anywhere. It's just going to sit there. Now, it's going to need something to push it out. But that something is not coming till the weekend, and I'll describe that as we go along when we get to our On the Weather Map segment. But, Dan, all sorts of watches and warnings in effect for New England. Want me to list them for you now?
Yeah, let's start with that, Brad.
Well, we've got a high wind warning first for Cape Cod and the islands. The winds could very easily gust to 60 miles per hour, and I actually saw a sounding forecast which indicated the possibility that the winds could gust to 70 miles per hour over on Cape Cod and the islands. So, Dan, if you have a 70-mile-per-hour wind and you've got heavily foliated trees because their leaves are still on them, you can look for a lot of branches down, especially over southeastern New England. You can look for a lot of branches down and maybe power lines down. So I'm expecting that there will be some tree damage and also multiple power outages in this particular storm, especially for our friends in southeastern Massachusetts, including Cape Cod and the islands. So that's the high wind warning. I do expect it to be windy back here in Connecticut, but I do not think that we will reach the high wind warning threshold. Okay. We've also got a flood watch in effect for southeastern Massachusetts, and for that particular watch, I saw, believe it or not, a 100% chance for New Bedford of getting 4 inches or more of rain. Dan, that is a month's supply of rain. Yeah. And the National Weather Service computer modeling is guaranteeing that with this storm.
Guaranteed.
Actually, Dan, it's guaranteeing it. They're saying it's a 100% done deal. The odds back here in Connecticut are that we are, and this was the low threshold. The low threshold is between now and Saturday morning at 8 a.m. of us getting 1 to 3 inches of rain in Connecticut. That was the low end threshold. I saw the high end threshold up much more like around the 4-inch mark. So this is going to be a very significant rainfall for us back here in Connecticut, but we can use it, get the groundwater up and everything before we head into the winter months while the ground is still not. Obviously, the water can percolate down into the groundwater. So in some ways, this is a good thing as we head into the winter months for us. But over in southeastern Massachusetts, again, they could double that amount of rain we get here. So if we're getting 2 to 4 inches here, they're getting 4 to 8 inches of rain. That's going to lead to flood there. So that's why the flood watch is up there.
Okay. Now, some people might be asking, why is this storm not being classified, or maybe it is, but is this storm being classified as a tropical storm?
At this point, Dan, no. And at this point, I would think it's unlikely because a tropical storm is a warm core storm. They're supposed to move up into our latitude and move even further north of our latitude, say up toward Maine or the Canada Maritimes. A lot of times cold air is entrained into the system and it becomes what is called a subtropical system. But this system, in its origins, has a cold side to it and has a warm side. So it's what we call an extratropical cyclone. Now, it's going to be major. I mean, there's no question about it. And sometimes a major nor'easter is just as bad as a minor hurricane. You can get a nor'easter with 75, 80 mile per hour wind gusts, like you can get a minor hurricane with 75, 80 mile per hour wind gusts. So again, I don't want to get bogged down on what we call it, but I do not think it's likely that it will achieve a tropical storm or hurricane type name. But this system is a major nor'easter, and it's going to be pounding the New England coast for days. And I think the worst of the storm is going to be late tonight. So this is Wednesday night, and then the storm will go through at least Thursday night and Friday morning before it starts to taper a little. And Dan, kind of highlighting what I mean about the wind field around this storm, right up to the Rhode Island shoreline, and then right up to the southeastern Massachusetts shoreline, and all the way up the Massachusetts coast up to Boston and beyond, a storm warning is up, and that's one cut under a hurricane. So a hurricane has winds in excess of 74 miles per hour, and the storm warning is just short of that. I read a forecast discussion out of Boston, Dan, that the Boston coast was expecting a 3-foot storm surge. And think of how the Boston coast faces. It
That's
faces
right.
faces due east. And this system is going to be, a persistent easterly flow into Boston. So they're looking at a 3-foot storm surge. But this is what I was amazed at, Dan. A 3-foot storm surge, but a 20-foot waves on top of that. So we're going to see a lot of video coming in, I think, from our friends in eastern New England of how the Massachusetts coast is getting really devastated by this storm.
And Connecticut's not off the hook either. What you're saying is we can expect a substantial amount of rain. Now, what about wind as far as power outages in Connecticut?
Okay, so we've got the major nor'easter drifting toward the benchmark, which is 40 north and 70 west, which is out southeast of Nantucket. And we've got a significant high-pressure system to the north. This morning, that high is located up over Caribou, Maine. So the flow between the two systems is a strong easterly flow into New England, which is going to bring in a lot of moisture. Now, the National Weather Service, because of that Greenland block that I talked about, is calling this a quasi-stationary storm. So in other words, that storm is just sitting in one place. As far as answering your question, Dan, I see sustained winds in the order of 30 to 40 miles per hour, and we could gust to 50 miles per hour here, especially along the southeast coast of Connecticut. But we are expecting gusts over 60 miles per hour for Cape Cod and the islands. And as I said, some of those future soundings are showing the low risk for a 70 mile per hour gust out over parts of Cape Cod and out near Nantucket. So the significant ocean storm definitely bringing strong winds here, perhaps damaging winds southeastern Massachusetts. I do expect scattered tree damage and power outages. And with this water piling in, the one good thing we've got going, Dan, that I read about is that we have an astronomically low high tide right now. But even so, with the flow around this storm and the pushing of the ocean water in toward the New England coast, the forecast is for minor and then even possibly moderate coastal flooding. And the place that is most likely to flood would be Nantucket. So we will keep an eye on our friends off to the east, but sort of that's the answer to that question about the wind.
Let me ask you this. What brought about this change and created the Greenland block again? What has happened in the atmosphere to bring about the return of the Greenland block?
Well, what has happened there, Dan, is immense high pressure has developed in all levels of the atmosphere there. So their weather in Greenland, now day after day while we get pounded here, they're sitting under sunny skies and beautiful conditions. So it's kind of what I like to refer to as the rubber band theory, or when you were in school and maybe were playing with a pendulum. If you had say a metallic ball on a string, and you brought another metallic ball on the string back an inch or two and let it go, it would hit the stationary metallic ball and send that moving, and it would go back and forth and whatever. But if you took that metallic ball and you brought it back, say, a foot and let it go, it would send the other metallic ball flying off in the other direction. So it's kind of the same thing with the atmosphere. You stretch an elastic band a little, it'll come shooting back a little. You stretch an elastic band a lot, it'll come shooting back a lot. So typically in the atmosphere, you find a similar thing. When you have some weather that's really great and very nice somewhere, to counterbalance it, you usually have downstream from that awful weather. And we're seeing these weather extremes right now setting up. I mentioned we need something to kick this quasi-stationary storm out of the way. Well, on the weather map this morning, Dan, in addition to our blocked ocean storm, and we're saying, how the heck are we going to get rid of it? How the heck is it going to go anywhere with this Greenland block in place? I want to point your attention to what's going on now out west. In the western part of the United States, we have a major cold front and a blizzard going on in Montana. Perhaps you've heard about that on the news and so forth. The storm is centered over Wyoming. Now, this is going to be the kicker system. This is going to be the system that finally kicks this nor'easter off the coast far enough that we will not be under its influence. So I'll track that for you. By tomorrow, it looks like that storm is going to be centered over South Dakota. And then by Friday, it looks like that storm is going to move into southern Minnesota and the western Great Lakes. So by Friday, the cold front will be sweeping into the western Great Lakes. But we are still going to be under the influence of that nor'easter, just sort of sitting quasi-stationary off the New England coast. Now, Saturday morning, the cold front moves into the eastern Great Lakes and starts coming into western New York and western Pennsylvania. And then by Sunday, the frontal system is sweeping through southern New England. Dan, that is what we call in meteorology the kicker. That's going to be what sweeps this storm finally out to sea. And I see that happening again as we head toward the weekend. But until then, we are in for one heck of a storm, especially late tonight. So that's Wednesday night, all day Thursday, and Thursday night. And Dan, I want to mention this to you too. I know you're a big sports fan, and tomorrow night is the Patriots game, Thursday night football.
Mm-hmm.
The Patriots are playing the New York Giants in Foxborough. Now, I know, we've seen many a time, you turn on the Patriots game in December or whatever, or, one of the playoff games, and there's snow going on, and they're always, all the announcers are always talking about snowy Foxborough or whatever. Well, I'll tell you what, you're going to turn on that game tomorrow night. It's going to look like a monsoon. I think we're going to see pouring rain, and I think it's going to be windswept rain as well. So I think that'll wreak havoc with the passing game and wreak havoc with the kicking game. So I'm not a bettor, but if I were a bettor, I would take the weather into serious consideration in tomorrow's game. I think it's probably going to act to help keep the score down very low. And I think a lot of, what Brady might want to do in terms of the passing game and everything is going to be severely impacted by the weather tomorrow evening.
Well, I can tell you this, and I know you're a Patriots fan, a diehard Patriots fan. I'm a diehard Giants fan, although I do root for the Patriots when they're not playing the Giants, but let that go. Let me just add that the Giants, who have practically a non-existent running game because Barkley is hurt, I'm saying right now I'd be surprised if Barkley, who was rumored to be coming back to play tomorrow, I'd be surprised if the Giants would now take that chance with this kind of weather moving in. Why risk losing your star running back for the rest of the season, putting him on wet turf? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's a great point to add, Dan. So, you always look at weather as the great equalizer, and I think tomorrow night it's going to be very, very significant in Foxborough. I mean, something fluky could happen, like, a punt or something could get caught up in the wind, and the the punt receiver might muff it, or, field goals are going to get blown off course or whatever by the wind. So I see kind of maybe a fluky game tomorrow. So, we'll see what happens. I think it will be interesting to watch.
Okay, one more question before we wrap up the podcast and get a summation on the forecast, and that is, with this high wind velocity, what do you think that will do to the leaves? I'm thinking a lot of these leaves are going to be shed by the trees without them having burst into their full color. What do you say?
I'm afraid that's correct, Dan. Any chance that we had of a spectacular fall, I think, in terms of foliage viewing, I think will go by the wayside here. Some of the leaves that are still green or maybe just starting to turn might be strong enough to hang on up against this wind, but I do think the wind is going to strip a lot of the leaves and bring a lot of the leaves down, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some branches come down here in Connecticut. But I do think that the damage will be much more significant off to the east in eastern Massachusetts. I told my wife one thing I'm going to do after the podcast today, Dan, is go down and check my gas tanks to make sure we have enough gasoline on hand in case we need the generator. And if we did need the generator and we didn't have the gasoline, my name would be Mud. So I am immediately going to go check that, make sure that all is okay. But, we got to kind of brace ourselves for the pretty significant storm. So, can wrap it up with a forecast here if you want.
Yeah, we don't want your name becoming Mud, so let's wrap it up and let's see what the forecast looks like. Give us a summation.
All right, Dan. All right, for this day, which is Wednesday, October 9th, 2019, we've got periods of rain with an increasing northeasterly wind. I think temperatures today only in the middle 50s. And tonight, rain with temperatures in the 40s. Thursday looks rainy, I think even cooler than today, with temperatures in the low to mid-50s. Again, I'm thinking the peak of the storm here in Connecticut will be in the Thursday time frame, going into Thursday night, rainy and windy Thursday night in the 40s. And remember the Patriots game and the Giants game, it looks like rain-swept, windy conditions in Foxborough. For Friday, it looks like rain, mainly in the morning and the midday, tending to taper, I think, toward dinner time with temperatures in the 50s. Now, the weekend does not look that bad. I've got Saturday is mainly cloudy with a bit of sun, and with a little sun poking out. Maybe it'll get up near 60. Sunday, I think, will be sunny and in the 60s. And Monday, Dan, a lot of folks have it off. Columbus Day, it looks mostly sunny and temperatures in the 60s.
Okay, well, there you have it, our Brad Field Weather Podcast brought to you by Action Carpet of Simsbury, Sinnet Travel of Waterbury. Brad, to our audience and to you and your family, be safe because weather obviously a big factor over the next few days.
Absolutely, Dan. And we wanted to point out to our listeners here that, we do a weekly podcast, obviously, but when something big is happening, we want to get out in front of it. And it was Dan's idea last night. He gave me a quick text and said, "Hey, Brad, with this big storm coming in, you want to move up the podcast to Wednesday?" And I said, "Great idea. Let's do it on Wednesday." But it's similar, Dan. We like to get a good angle on the weekend because
Right.
A lot of folks have big weekend plans. But, if a snowstorm's coming in on Tuesday, we're going to be there Monday with a special podcast. So we just want, as we go through the winter especially,
Right.
we want our listeners to know, hey, we've got your back here with the weather, and we're not gonna leave you hanging, just because it's not Friday and the day we typically do the podcast. So
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
Be safe to everybody, and of course we'll keep them updated on the website, bradfieldweather.com. Be safe, my friend.
Thank you, Dan. You as well.
Thanks.